Imagine breaking into a tomb that has been sealed for 2,000 years. You squeeze through a narrow passage. Your torch barely lights the walls. Ahead of you is a doorway. Behind it, you are certain, is treasure. Then you hear something move beneath your feet. Not a ghost, not a curse. Something mechanical. Ancient tomb builders understood one terrifying truth. If treasure was buried underground, sooner or later, somebody would come looking for it. And stopping those thieves required more than thick walls. It required deception, confusion, fear, and in some cases, engineering designed to make entering the tomb much easier than leaving it. But there is an important warning before we go underground. Hollywood has filled ancient tombs with swinging blades, spear launchers, giant rolling stones, and pressure plates. Real archaeology is usually less dramatic. Many ancient tombs were protected primarily through hidden entrances, massive blocking stones, confusing corridors, deep shafts, and carefully concealed burial chambers. Egyptian excavations also show just how widespread ancient tomb robbery became, despite those precautions. So today, we are separating documented engineering from plausible reconstruction and ancient legend. And somehow, the real version may be even more disturbing, because these tombs were not designed for adventure. They were designed to make intruders doubt every step they took. Here are 7 hidden death traps built into, associated with, or feared inside ancient tombs. And the final one may still be waiting beneath the ground today. Number 7, the corridor that goes nowhere. The simplest trap does not need to kill you. It only needs to make you lost. Ancient tomb builders understood that underground architecture could become a weapon by itself. Imagine entering a stone passage barely wide enough for your shoulders. You walk forward. Then the corridor bends. Then it splits. One route slopes downward. Another seems to lead toward the center of the monument. You choose the obvious path, and that is exactly what the builders expected. The corridor ends. Nothing, no burial chamber, no treasure. Only stone. Now you turn around. But underground, direction becomes surprisingly difficult to judge. Your torch is weaker, the air feels heavier, and every passage suddenly looks identical. In Egyptian funerary architecture, false doors were a real religious feature rather than physical traps. They symbolized a passage through which the dead could move between worlds, but tomb builders also concealed actual burial routes behind masonry, shafts, plugs, and architectural misdirection. The goal was simple. Make the robber attack the wrong wall, dig the wrong tunnel, follow the wrong corridor. Every wasted hour underground increased the danger. More smoke from lamps, less water, less patience, and a greater chance that someone would make a fatal mistake. The first weapon of the tomb was not steel, it was uncertainty. Number 6. The vertical shaft. Imagine finally discovering what looks like the correct passage. You step forward, and the floor disappears. Deep burial shafts were common features in Egyptian tomb construction. Some burial chambers could only be reached by descending into shafts cut deep into rock. These shafts were not necessarily built as booby traps, but to an intruder working in darkness, they could become deadly obstacles. At the bottom might be another chamber, or another tunnel, or nothing useful at all. One badly placed foot could turn an archaeological obstacle into a fatal fall, and even if the robber survived the descent, getting back out could be much harder. Now imagine doing this without modern ropes, without electric lighting, without a map. You lower one man down. He disappears into darkness. Minutes pass. Then you hear him shouting. He has found another passage. Everyone becomes excited. The treasure must be close. More men descend. More equipment follows. Then they discover that the chamber has already been emptied, or that the route is false, or that the actual burial chamber lies somewhere else entirely. The shaft has done its job. It has concentrated the intruders underground. It has exhausted them, and it has placed a wall of vertical stone between them and the outside world. A trap does not always need a trigger. Sometimes gravity is enough. Number 5. The stone plug. This is where tomb security becomes brutally physical. Some ancient burial complexes used enormous stone blocks to close passages after the burial was complete. Think about what that means. The builders create a corridor. The funeral procession passes through it. The king or noble is placed inside. Then workers move stone barriers into position. The route that existed yesterday no longer exists today. To a robber arriving years later, there may be no obvious doorway, only a wall, and behind that wall may be tons of stone. Breaking through becomes dangerous. Remove the wrong support, crack the wrong block, and the structure above you may shift. A stone weighing hundreds or thousands of kilograms does not need springs, gears, or hidden wires to kill someone. It simply needs to move. This is one reason the cinematic idea of a giant falling stone feels so believable. The exact pressure plate may be fiction. The danger of unstable blocking masonry is not. Now picture the robber. He finds a stone barrier. He knows treasure must be behind it, so he begins cutting, iron after hour, piece after piece. Eventually, a gap opens. Dust pours through. He pushes his torch inside. Nothing moves, so he crawls forward. But what he cannot see is whether the stones above him are still carrying their original weight. The tomb has forced him to destroy the very structure protecting him. The deeper he goes, the more dangerous his own excavation becomes. Number 4. The sand chamber. This is one of the most frightening ideas associated with ancient security engineering, because sand behaves like both a solid and a liquid. Contained properly, it sits still. Give it somewhere to flow, and suddenly an enormous mass begins moving. Ancient engineers understood the usefulness of sand in construction. One famous concept associated with pyramid engineering involves using sand as part of systems for positioning or supporting heavy stone elements. From there comes a terrifying possibility. A sealed cavity filled with dry sand could conceal or support a blocking mechanism. Disturb the wrong section, and the sand shifts, not explosively, not dramatically, just relentlessly. Imagine cutting through a wall and noticing a thin stream of sand falling from a crack. At first, it seems harmless. Then the stream becomes thicker. Sand begins covering the floor. You step backward. More pours in. And now the real danger becomes clear. Thousands of kilograms of material may be sitting behind that opening. You cannot push it back. You cannot stop it with your hands. And in a narrow tunnel, you may not have enough space to escape. Was every legendary sand trap deliberately designed to bury tomb robbers alive? No. Evidence for elaborate automatic sand drowning chambers is far weaker than popular culture suggests. But sand-assisted blocking methods and complex sealing systems make the nightmare mechanically believable. And that was enough to create legends. A tomb did not need to kill every robber. It only needed people to believe it might. Number 3. The deadfall. You hear a crack above you. Then everyone freezes. In modern language, a deadfall is brutally simple. A heavy object is held in position. Something disturbs the support. Gravity finishes the job. Ancient tombs provide ideal conditions for accidental deadfalls, even without a deliberately engineered trigger. Stone ceilings, narrow corridors breaking masonry, weak supports, high chambers, and intruders actively cutting into load-bearing structures. That combination is terrifying. Picture a group of robbers attacking a sealed corridor. They have spent days removing stone. They are exhausted. One man strikes a support. A crack appears above him. Dust falls. Someone tells him to stop, but through the hole ahead, they can see gold. So he strikes again, the stone shifts, and suddenly the tomb becomes the weapon. No elaborate machine is required. Only weight. This is an important difference between fiction and reality. We do not need to imagine ancient architects building cartoonish ceiling crushers triggered by a single floor tile. A carefully blocked underground structure was already dangerous, and if a tomb builder wanted to make penetration more difficult, forcing thieves to disturb heavy masonry could create a deadly deterrent without any complicated mechanism at all. The robber believes he is opening the tomb. In reality, he may be dismantling the ceiling above his own head. Number 2. The poison chamber. This is where archaeology becomes tangled with ancient fear. Sealed underground spaces can become dangerous over time. Poor ventilation alone can turn a confined chamber into a serious hazard. But ancient stories go much further. They describe tombs protected by toxic substances, poisonous materials, fumes, and chambers that punish anyone who violates the dead. The most famous example lies beneath a hill in China. The unopened burial complex of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. Ancient historian Sima Qian described an extraordinary underground world built for the emperor, including rivers and seas represented with flowing mercury. Modern measurements around the burial mound have detected unusually high mercury concentrations in the soil, which makes the old account especially fascinating. But the central tomb chamber has still not been excavated, so nobody can simply walk inside and confirm exactly what remains there. Mercury is toxic, and in an enclosed underground environment, mercury vapor would be extremely dangerous. But here is where we have to be careful. We cannot say with certainty that the mercury was installed specifically as a poison trap for grave robbers. It may have represented rivers in a symbolic model of the empire. It may have served several purposes. Or the ancient description may contain exaggeration. But imagine being the first intruder to enter such a chamber. There is no visible enemy, no blade, no falling stone, nothing chasing you. You breathe, you continue searching. And the danger may already be inside your body. That is much more frightening than a spear trap, because a spear tells you when it has attacked, poison does not. And now we reach the final trap, the one that combines architecture, psychology, and fear. Number 1. The tomb that makes you trap yourself. The greatest ancient tomb defense may not have been any single machine. It may have been the entire structure. Imagine the sequence. First, you have to find the entrance. Then you crawl through a hidden opening. You descend a shaft. You reach a sealed corridor. You break through a stone plug. Behind it is another passage. Then a false chamber. Then another wall. Your torch burns lower. Your group argues over direction. Someone thinks they heard stone moving. Someone else smells something strange. Then you notice sand beneath a wall. Now every sound matters. Every crack becomes a warning. Every stone might fall. Every chamber might contain poison. And every corridor might lead farther away from the exit. This is architectural paranoia. The tomb does not need 7 independent killing machines. It needs 7 things you are afraid could kill you. That psychological effect becomes even stronger when combined with curses and supernatural warnings. Ancient people did sometimes place protective texts, threats, or religious warnings around sacred spaces and burials. Whether those words had any physical power did not matter. To the person reading them underground, surrounded by darkness, they changed the meaning of everything around him. A falling pebble was no longer a pebble, it was a warning. A headache was no longer exhaustion, it was poison. A draft was no longer moving air, it was something breathing in the darkness. And that is what makes ancient tomb security so fascinating. The most effective systems did not necessarily work like modern traps. They layered obstacles, concealment, heavy barriers, adder routes, dangerous excavation, isolation, and fear. The archaeological record shows that tomb robbery was extremely common. Many Egyptian tombs and burial chambers were stripped in antiquity despite the extraordinary effort invested in protecting them. So, in one sense, the robbers won. They found entrances, they broke through walls, they stole treasure. But that also tells us something else. Ancient builders knew the threat was real. They were designing against human enemies who were patient, motivated, and willing to tear monuments apart stone by stone. And their answer was not one magical trap. It was uncertainty built into architecture, a corridor that lies to you, a shaft that isolates you, a stone barrier you have to dismantle yourself, a chamber that may shift, a ceiling you cannot trust, air you cannot see, and somewhere beyond all of it, treasure powerful enough to convince you to keep moving forward. That may be the cruelest trap of all, because once the tomb convinces you that the treasure is just one chamber farther, you do the rest yourself.